Right. I got my script. Good afternoon, I'm Carrigan, and this is Making Contact for October the 18th. Today, my guest is a leader in the New Westminster art scene. She's the current Poet Laureate of the Township of New Westminster. She is the Secretary-Treasurer of the Royal City Literary Arts Society, a full member of the League of Canadian Poets, and more. I'll let her talk about that in a little bit. She's here today to talk with us about what it means to be the Poet Laureate, what she does with the art scene in New Westminster. She'll talk a bit about what she's currently doing and projects she's currently working on. And at the end of it all, I want to find out about the kind of grassroots programs that are in play to get the youth of today involved in poetry and creative writing. Candice James joins me. How's it going, Candice?
Excellent, Alex.
Firstly, I have to ask, what are the responsibilities of Poet Laureate? What does that mean?
Well, the actual responsibilities are when there is a civic event, the city asks me to write a poem for the event, and then I attend the event, read the poem, and stay for the free dinner.
What was the last event that you were at to represent as the Poet Laureate?
Let's see. I have to think. We're into, I guess it would have been, I know it was May for May Day, but there was something after that. The May Day one's lovely. You know, the little girls in their white. Beautiful.
So what else do you do for the city?
Well, I do this on my own because I love words. I love poetry. So I started Poetic Justice, which runs every Sunday except holiday weekends from 3 to 5 p.m. We have 3 to 4 features in the first hour, and then the next hour is open mic for whoever wants to come read their poems, and it's very well attended. And that's in its 4th year now running. And I have Poetry in the Park, which runs every Wednesday, July and August, at the Queen's Park Band Show out in the park. It's just beautiful. If it rains, we go inside to the Arts Council building. And just recently, because I've started up Royal City Literary Arts Society, we have a short story night happening not every second Wednesday, the second and fourth Wednesday of each month for 2 hours. And sometimes there's a feature and sometimes it's strictly open mic. And then every Sunday night, and this is even on holiday weekends, we have Songwriters Night. So we're getting all the writers involved, and I still want to set up something for screenwriters in the near future.
What's the reception like for some of these nights?
To begin with, anything you start new, it's a little sparse. And then word of mouth starts happening, and more people come. So it's just a matter of usually the first couple of weeks, there's not too many there, and then by 3 months, we've got maybe not a full house, but we have at least 15 to 30 people at every one.
That's good to hear. I have to admit, poetry as a medium to me, I do appreciate it, but when it comes to going out into the town,
To actually listen to it.
it becomes a little bit harder to go out and find it.
It was definitely that way, but lately, I was talking to a girl who's been around it for many years in town, because I got out of it for a while. But she was saying, 20 years ago, it was difficult to find anywhere to read. But she said now there's more and more events popping up everywhere. And if you actually want to go to something poetic, every night of the week, be it Vancouver, Burnaby, Coquitlam, or New West, there's something happening. It's coming to the forefront.
We'll talk again about that in a little bit, but I want to find out more about you. When did you first start with the meaning of poetry? Was there a specific moment where you thought, this is what I want to do, or was it a culmination of a couple of things?
It's a culmination. It's actually kind of funny how everything started. I was back in school, I think I was in grade 7 or 8, and I saw this cute boy. I thought he was so cute. Anyway, I thought I'll write a poem, and so I wrote this poem, and I looking back at it, it was just terrible, but at the time that was pretty good. So I showed it to my girlfriend, and she read it and started to laugh, and I said, well, what's funny? And she says, I can't stand these 2 lines, his curly locks be crazy knocks. So that was the beginning, and then I continued writing, and actually even in school I took a journalism class, and my parents wanted me to go to university and be a pharmacist, so they took me out of that class. And I continued through. I never did go to university, but I continued through. But I did continue writing. And then my daughter was in daycare, and she was very young, and she was very hard to handle, so they said they couldn't keep her. She'd have to go to early childhood education. She's about 2 years old, and I had to drive from Crescent Beach to North Surrey for 2 hours for her to go there every day, so I sat in the car and wrote. And that's when it really started, because every day I had 2 hours to fill, and I was writing. That's how it all started, and it just moved on.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I see you've brought quite a catalog with you today.
Yes.
Do you want to talk a little bit about your first book? I read a little bit about it on your biography. You got some very high praise for it.
Very, very interesting. I had written, about 75 or so poems at the time, and a friend of mine, Cheryl Kingswood, always was reading them, saying, "Oh, you should send these somewhere." And I said, "No, they're not good enough." She said, you should. So she sent them away to 3 presses, and the interesting thing is, the press, I think it was Coach House Press, said, well, we like it, but we only publish books of people that have been in periodicals or magazines, and I have. The second press was Oberon. I don't even know if they're still in existence. They basically wrote back and said, "No, this isn't for us." And the third one, the gentleman called me. It was Fiddlehead Poetry Books from University of New Brunswick. And he said, "I really like it. I want to do a book, and I'm coming out to Vancouver in 3 weeks. How many poems do you have?" So I said, about 300, but I didn't. And he said, "Okay, well, I want to see them all." So then, for 3 weeks, madly writing. And but he came out, he went through them all, and he chose 116 to do a chapbook with. And he made some changes, and at the time, I don't really like that change, but it's the loss. So looking back now, I see all the changes he made were good. But at the time, when you're first doing it, it's hard to see people change your things. Now I don't care who changes my stuff. I look forward to them giving me some better ideas. But I was very fortunate, and I didn't realize it. He was such a revered gentleman. He's actually in the Order of Canada, and he was so high up in the literary world that I was just so lucky. And he did some mentoring with me, and then he'd keep saying, he'd write me and say, "Send me some poems," and I'd say, "Okay, I'll get that to you." But I never did, because I was in the music business then, and I was out doing that stuff. But I did keep writing over the years and just filed it away, and about, I guess, a month and a half ago, I pulled 2 filing door cabinets of old stuff on them. And I went through them all, and I probably saved a stack that high that are good out of a stack that was taller than me. So there's, it wasn't much to save there, but still, I didn't want to throw them out, so I gave them to a friend. She can throw them out.
Yeah. There was something else that you had brought up that I initially hadn't prepared, but I want to find out about now. You said you spent some time in the music industry.
Yes.
What did you do?
Well, I played bass and sang, and had a few different bands I was in, and then had a couple of bands I ran, and it was a lot of fun, and I think that's what's been fortunate for me now, because I had to memorize all my songs. It makes it much easier for me to memorize my poetry now, because I'm used to memorizing, but it's so much easier to memorize a song than a poem, because you've got a melody to hang on to. In a poem, there's no melody. So you really got to memorize a poem.
It's, I feel like with the poetry, it's much more of a performance. You're right when you say that songs, they have that melody that you can fall back on, and you can remember, okay, I'm in this key,
Yeah.
maybe this is where I can go. You don't have that option of customization with a poem, per se.
No, you have to just really memorize it. And the ones that don't rhyme, they're kind of hard to memorize, but you get them down. What I do at night when I'm going to sleep, I run them in my head. I go over them. I maybe pick 7 or 8, and I go over them, and I go to sleep. And then next night I do another 7 or 8. I just run them through my head and see if there's anything what was that line? I'll have to look that up tomorrow and refresh.
From my limited experience with the medium of poetry, I understand that it is very personal and very emotional, very much involved with not only the person writing it, but you have to make it a relatable experience to the person listening. And what I'm trying to get out is, when you run through these poems in your head, are you remembering the script of the poem, or are you remembering the place you were when you wrote it, the emotion that is going through your mind as you wrote the poem. When you're going through these poems in your mind, how are you remembering them?
I'm actually going by words and script. I've memorized the actual words to the poem, so I've got every one. And then when I do recite, if I ever forget a line, because I do sometimes, it doesn't matter. I just make up another line till I get to the next one because nobody knows it anyway. But it works.
That's interesting. I
And
like
it's
that.
true, yeah.
I very much like that approach. Tell me about the state of the art scene in New Westminster right now.
Very good. Very good. Growing, blossoming, lots of things going on. The Royal City Literary Arts Society there's the Arts Council, and they did one event a year, which was Lit Fest New West, and they did some other events that they would ask me to start off with poem. But that was only 2 or 3 things a year, and one dedicated to literary. And I thought, we need more dedicated to literary. I want to have an awards night for Royal City Literary Arts next year, so we're working on that. Recognize these people that are working hard, got great words, great books, great poetry, great novels. They need some recognition, and we're definitely going to do it next year. By hook or by crook, we're going to get it done, and I'm really, really happy about that. And the actual arts side, visual arts, there's a lot happening with visual arts. New Westminster artists, they have a lot of shows, and there's the Van Dop Gallery, which features local artists, and same with the actual Arts Council building. We now have Anvil Civic Center being built, and there's going to be a lot of New Westminster artwork there. And this book I've done here, Shorelines, I put local artists, and my granddaughter's work in there too, because she's special needs, and art is one of her favorite things she does. It brings her out of herself, and I wanted her to have something as she grows older, so she'll have this book with her, some of her artwork in it, peppered with some okay artists, peppered with some good artists. So it's kind of a real myriad of artistic talents in there, and it's all villanelles, because villanelles are a little bit different, and I thought that would kind of go good with pictures. So.
Well, how is a villanelle different for some of our listeners who might not be so familiar with poetry?
It's an old French form that's come down through the centuries, and there's only 2 rhymes. If it's bread and rain, it's all ain or ed, all the way through, and there's 19 lines. Now you have the 3rd, 9th, 15th, and 19th lines are repeat. They're exactly the same. And then the 6th, 12th, 18th, and the first 6th, 12th, and 18th all repeat those same lines. So typical one is I cannot say the depth or length of scar I wear upon my heart because of you. In vestiges of dust from wayward star, alone at night I wonder where you are, and search through memories to find, but cannot say the depth or length of scar. So we've got the repeat, and cannot say the depth or length of scar repeats, and so does in vestiges of dust from wayward star. You build everything around those two. So when I write a villanelle, those 2 have to repeat at the end, and they have to work. So I write my last 2 lines, then I go back and build it, because there's no way I can not repeat the lines at the end together, that I have to repeat, spread out throughout, so they've got to make sense together.
That sounds a little intimidating for a young poet to be breaking into.
It's good. Structure is good. For
Yes.
years I wrote free verse, nothing but free verse. And it's only actually in 2009 I decided, I should get some structure in my writing. I'm going to write 10 songs. I'm going to make myself do that. And then I'll go back to my free verse and see what kind of difference it makes. When I'm writing the 10 sonnets, it was awful. I didn't like it. I thought, I don't like doing this, but I said I'll write 10. By the time I got to number 10, I thought, I kind of like doing these. So I wrote a whole bunch more hymns, the book of sonnets. But it's actually made my free verse what I consider better because there's more of a rhythm, more of a flow and rhythm in the free verse now from forcing myself to do structure.
Where's my next question? Pardon me, I'm taking advantage of the fact that this is a pre-recorded interview and I'm going to be heavily editing it, so I'm not so cautious of the ums and the ahs and looking at the script. And speaking of the script, I wanted to ask you what kind of events are coming up in the New Westminster art scene that you will be involved with.
Well, November 11th, I always have to do I started off on a big armory ceremony for the Armistice Day, and I write a new poem every year for it. And this one this year, I've called it Moments We Never Had to Endure. And it's not too long. You don't want to make it too long when you're doing a big crowd of people, so I always try and make it something that's under 2 minutes, maybe 1.5 minutes, and get through it. So that's the next one I have coming up. Recently, I can't remember what else I did, but I've done some stuff recently where I had to go, and I do get asked out to start off a lot of book launches. Renee Saplikar is a very good poet. She's written an epic poetry book about the children of Air India crash, and it's really historic, and it's very, very well. It's really different. It's so creative. She's having a book launch on December the 1st down at New Westminster downtown, and she's asked me to host it and open it up for her. So that'll be a nice afternoon. And that's not so much city, but I do a lot. I go out to White Rock Library and I perform. I've got Maple Ridge. I have to be out there at the Act Theatre on November 5th, and then I've got Richmond City Hall. So I get around to a lot of places which I can push New Westminster into arts and poetry scene and say, come on over to Poetic Justice. You should try this. Join this, you know. So I get a lot of stuff happening around so that people come to us. I love to network.
When you go up to these events, what's the typical age group of the people who are showing up?
Really varied. We have some that are like 19 and 21, and we have some that are 75 and 76, but I would say the general percentage probably ranges between 30 and 50, the general percentage. But we have many times 20-year-olds, 22-year-olds will come out. It's a very friendly, they come out for the open mic mostly, and so it's very important to me, and I've made sure everybody that I have hosting any of these events for me, it has to be warm, it has to be friendly. You have to make people feel they've done a good job so that we're encouraging. We need to promote encouragement for everybody that gets up on that stage and says anything. We need to encourage them. And so we do.
I'm really happy to hear that, because as a member of the younger generation who is now getting an interest in poetry, I feel that people in my generation, they don't take the poetry that quickly, or they feel that it's such a foreign medium to them, they don't ever want to pick it up for whatever reason. With that said, do you find that the younger people who are coming to your events, is there kind of a feeling of that with them?
Yes and no. I guess the best way to explain it is we did try to start up slam poetry in the West. We did that. We started it in late 2010. We ran it through 2011. We had to let it drop in 2012. There was so much slam poetry happening at UBC and in Vancouver that it was just kind of far for them to come to New West. And it did okay for a little bit, but it fell off. So we had to let it go. But the slam poets, more of the young people get into the slam poetry than the other side of poetry, more the written word. And have you heard slam poetry?
I have heard slam poetry, yes.
And it's really, they're very different. Poetry, readings, and slam poetry are very different. I guess it's, slam poetry is kind of like a rap song without music a lot of it, you know, and it's very fast. So, whereas the poetry readings are more putting your emotion into it. over on the horizon rose the pale sun. You know, something like that. And you can even have it like with part. I've done some slam poetry. Actually won second prize on one of them, but I can do it. I can do freestyle. I enjoy the more depth of the kind of poetry that I can kind of put out there, a little more softer flavor, and some of them have a little rougher flavor. But we found that slam poetry, we just couldn't keep it going in the West. It dwindled off, and then sometimes there'd be 3 and 4 people showing up, and we just couldn't keep it going, because you need to have at least 6 people minimum, and you want more so you can have your first round and then your second round. But other than that, up at the school, they have got spoken word poets coming in and working with the classes, which is really good. So they're, at least the teenagers at the high school are getting exposed to some form of poetry. And some of them, there's one girl there, Chelsea, I forgot her last name, I met her through slam poetry, and she comes down to our Poetic Justice, and she does some of her keener slam poems down there, and we have Sho Wiley from Vancouver, who's a slam poet. She comes to Poetic Justice and reads her poems, or doesn't read them, she speaks them, and she's a very good poet. And Heart to Art, it takes place over at Century House. So Century House is for the seniors, and they have a slam person that kind of is helping at the school come in with the youth and the seniors mixing together, doing poetry together. Yeah, that happened. I haven't got any part to do with that, but that's a Century House thing. A friend of mine, Margot Prentice, she puts that together, and she also runs Royal City Literary Arts Short Story Night. She puts that together, and the seniors love it, and I think the kids really are enjoying it too. So it's a lot. We're very youth oriented. New Westminster is very youth oriented, and I would like to see more of them coming out.
I agree with you. I would like to see a bit more of them too as well. I think it's very encouraging, those stories that you tell about the young people with their poems and getting out to more of the Poetic Justice nights and telling their poems. But it is a little discouraging that the slam poetry didn't take off. That is actually my initial interaction with poetry, getting into it. There was this TV show called Deaf Poetry Jam, and you're also very on point when you say it's very rapid. It's almost like a rap song.
Yeah.
And I think that might be what is getting the young generations into poetry a bit more structured and very deep other forms of poetry.
Yes. Yeah.
What would you why did the slam poetry have to fold?
Well, I think it's because Vancouver has a lot of slam venues, and the Commercial Drive, the Cafe du Soleil, and UBC Slam, and there's quite a few slams over there. And most of your slam poets are from Vancouver. I don't even know, I guess maybe we have a couple in the US, but the majority are from Vancouver. And if they can go to a closer venue with a bigger audience, why would they come to a farther away venue that they've got a SkyTrain to, a smaller room, and a lesser audience when they can get up? In other words, if they could get up at the PNE and perform, or New Westminster Raceway, where would you go?
I would go to the place where I can get the biggest amount of reach and more people that hear my work.
Yeah, and I think that had a lot to do with it too.
That makes sense. That makes quite a bit of sense. I'm just about going to wrap up here. I just want to ask really quickly more about the grassroots movements. Are you going to the schools to try and promote creative writing, or are there other avenues that you're trying to get at the youth to promote this wonderful medium?
Well, I was asked in December of last year to go into a classroom and do a presentation, and I went in, had a lot of fun, and it was interesting. One kid asked me, "Can you freestyle?" Because I guess he thought I couldn't. I said, "Sure, give me a subject, I'll take on it for you." So he said chalkboard, so then I went with that. And then we had a question and answer, and a boy asked me a question. I forget what it was. Anyway, I answered. The teacher afterwards emailed me and said, "I was so excited to see the," she put quotation marks, too cool boy who never, ever associates to actually hear him speak up and ask you two questions. She said, congratulations on getting him to speak. He's just too cool for these things, you know. So that was a nice day. I enjoyed it, and they said they'd like to have me back, but I haven't heard anything this year, and I haven't really pushed it. I've been so busy. God, I hardly have time to sleep. Doesn't sound like I would be, but boy, I am. Right now I'm working on grants for our class, and I hate math, and I'm always the one ending up doing it.
What else are you working on?
I've got a fellow from Coquitlam, Don Portalance, excellent artist, just excellent. He's been in it for years, and he makes his living as an artist. He gave me 82 paintings in a file, and he said, let's do a book together. He said, you write poems to these, could you? So I said, sure. And I started that in June, and I only have 20 more to go, so I've done 62. Should have the other 20 done. I just finding the time. When I sit down, I do about 12 at a crack, but I just don't have the time. So I said to myself, once I get the grant done, and once I get the AGM over on November 2nd, I'm going to finish that and have it to them by the end of November. So I'm working on that, and I have two other publishers that have asked me for manuscripts that I just haven't got together yet. I've got to do that. And I've got an anthology of Royal City poets that I'm editing and putting together, 40 poets, so I've got to have that ready for the end of November so they can send them to people for Christmas. So I'm very busy. Yeah, over and above the performances I do.
That sounds like a very full schedule.
I really have a full schedule.
All right, that's all the questions I have prepared. I'm going to ask you two last things. Firstly, I'm going to ask if there is anything else that you would like to touch on that I didn't touch on, and after that, I'd like you to read one of your poems for us.
Okay, the one thing I will touch on, I noticed something you said earlier, and it's probably true for a lot of poets, but many, many, many of my poems are not personal at all. Some of them are. Some of them are. I'd say maybe 35 to 40% of my poems are personal. The other 60 are not personal. I just pick a line, think of something, and then I just rattle down through it, but it's not personal. I just do I imagine a lot of my poetry. I just imagine stuff. And it's really fun to imagine. I just got the wildest imagination in the universe. And I could have fun on a desert island. I'd find something interesting in the sand. Or
Would you say that that's key to being a good poet?
For me it is. For me it is. If I don't have that imagination, all those lines running through my... Like, I would hate to have to sit down and think, what'll I write? I actually think to myself, I must find a pen before I forget that, because I always got all this stuff going through my head. So it's, for me it's key. I don't know about other people. So it's not work to me, because it's just there, and I put it down. I don't even really have to think about it. I get a line, and then the rest just comes.
What you just said runs parallel to some other people, some very successful people that I've interviewed. When it's not work, then you really start having fun with it, and you really know that this is what you have to do. I am sitting here with Candice James, the 2012 Poet Laureate for New Westminster, also the Secretary-Treasurer of the Royal City Literary Arts.
I'm actually the president now.
The president now? When did that happen?
Was it back in March or April?
My apologies, I need to update my notes then.
The president at the time was having some issues and a lot of stuff happening in his life, and he just didn't have the time. So he moved into a directorship, and I moved into the presidency.
Stepped up because you had some time on your schedule to fill.
Yeah, they say if you don't ever ask anybody that's not busy to do something.
Candice, can I get you to read one of your poems for us?
I can. I can read a nice one, or I can read kind of a strange one.
Ooh, I like strange.
Okay, I'll do Wonderland.
Okay. This is Candice James on Eveolution 107.9 with her poem, Wonderland.
In the beginning, I wander through this wonderland, a smooth stone skipping through the lakes in my mind. In the middle, dreams cascade and splash onto the mirrors of my soul. In the end, I ripple and reflect, then disappear into a never-ending pool of timelessness. On a stretch of sandy beach, I climb into a smooth stone and disappear inside a wrinkled pocket of sand, alone with only the echoes of my mind. Black top hats tip in parody. White satin gloves feign to touch me in this moment of rude silence. I am magnetized by these illusions and quite delirious with the expectation that I will come face to face with myself. I'm drawn into the mystical chant of a strange madrigal as I wander through this wonderland I call oblivion. And out of the mist approaching me, I see the moon turn inside out, feel it spin and spiral in the palm of my hand, then disappear into the black hole of night. It makes my heart bleed dark matter bullets that fall through to the other side of me, the side of me I've never met, the side of me that scares me to death. So I shrink back into my shadow at the ragged edge of my spirit, beneath a mirror of mirages, vivid with colors, vibrating, pulsating, in pastel verses and opaque rhapsodies. This is Wonderland. I love to peek into it, climb through it, slide down its shining porcelain walls of beauty, love, music, artistry, poetry. This is Wonderland. This is me, stripped right down past the core of me till I'm not me anymore, until I am pure, luminous spirit. In the beginning, a smooth stone. In the middle, dreams splashing. In the end, I am a written disappearing.
Candice, thank you very much for joining us today.
You're welcome, my pleasure. That was a strange one.
Yeah, I like that though.